Revco Discount Drugstores was a major drugstore chain that opened in 1956 and closed in 1997. Thank you for your suggestions.
If you think those huge discount stores make you feel small, imagine how I feel. Besides, you don't have to go that far out of your way to save money. Just go to Revco. Besides weekly sales, discount clubs, and everyday low prices, you can save on hundreds of Revco brand products. They're just like the national brands you're used to, but cost up to 70% less. So you can buy more, spend less, and even get your money back if you're not satisfied. Maybe you never knew how one drugstore could save you more money more ways. Now you know.
In 1945, Detroit druggist Bernard Schulman hired a 33-year-old accountant to balance the books for his store, Regal Drugs. Schulman could hardly have known that the accountant, Sidney Dworkin, would become, as a trade paper once labeled him, the architect of modern drugstoring. In 1956, Schulman decided to transform his single store into a discount chain. At that time, Regal Drugs had a subsidiary, the Registered Vitamin Company, which sold vitamins door to door. Schulman decided to shorten the subsidiary's name to Revco and added the initials DS, signifying drug store. The guiding philosophy behind discounting was to turn over a high volume of low-profit merchandise in a self-service, consumer-oriented environment. To implement this philosophy, Revco used a computer to determine the fast-moving items and advertise comparable prices for similar products. These early innovations helped transform Revco from a single store into a large chain. Revco's innovative marketing tactics, however, encountered some resistance from established producers. In 1963, the pharmaceutical giant Eli Lilly successfully sued Revco for selling its product at a discount. Within 4 years of its incorporation, Revco had grown to 20 stores in Michigan, Ohio, and West Virginia. Schulman's firm took a giant leap in 1961 when it acquired a Cleveland-based Standard Drug Company, a traditional chain that owned 41 stores in Ohio, for $2 million. Revco rapidly transformed the Standard stores into its discount format, folding the entire chain into a prefabricated system. Revco repeated this process time and again in the next several years, growing by leaps and bounds. In 1964, Revco reaped $29 million of sales from its 63 stores. Schulman decided to take his company public in October of 1964. Revco issued its first stock offering. Fortified by this influx of capital, Revco was prepared to expand. In 1965, Revco opened 6 new stores and purchased Gallagher Drug Company, a 52-store chain. The same year, Revco introduced a new wrinkle in its marketing strategy and began displaying per-unit prices for competing brands of merchandise, a practice that soon became prevalent in most sectors of retailing. Despite the company's success and promising future, Bernard Schulman had decided to extricate himself from the company he had founded and nurtured. When he resigned in 1966, Revco owned 117 stores in 5 states. Bernard Schulman would sell his interest in the company for $1.5 million in 1967, worth $13.3 million today, and retired, moving with his wife to La Jolla, California. In 1966, sales topped $50 million, spurred in part by the acquisition of Waco Scaffolding Company. Growth in both profits and number of stores continued apace from the rest of the decade. In 1967, Revco acquired Patterson Drug Company, and in 1968, Revco moved into the Southwest by acquiring Ryan Evans, a 47-store chain based in Arizona. Sales in 1968 topped $70 million. In 1970, Revco acquired Cole Drug Company, a 28-store chain operating in Alabama and Georgia. The acquisitions helped the corporation reap profits of $4.3 million from sales of $131 million in 1970. By 1971, Revco was operating 294 stores. In 1972, the firm acquired vitamin manufacturer Private Formulations Inc. and yet another chain of drugstores. In a stock trade valued at $81 million, Revco acquired the 163-store chain White Cross. Every time Revco acquired a new chain, it instantly converted the new stores to the Revco format. Structure was the key component of Revco's success. Revco stores were generally smaller than drugstores run by other chains. The size helped maintain a more secure, customer-oriented environment in which the main products remained drugs and cosmetics. This formula clearly worked. By 1973, Revco, with 527 stores, ranked second only to Walgreens in the number of stores, and third in sales volume behind only Walgreens and Thrifty's. In 1974, the firm opened the first Revco Optical Center, which was run independently within a drugstore. By 1978, the company operated 48 optical centers. In 1974 also, Revco purchased Jacobs, a 25-store chain from Reed's, Inc. The following year, Revco encountered more serious difficulties with the law. State and local officials investigated Revco for fraudulent billings of Medicaid prescriptions. 2 company officials were ultimately convicted of instituting a false billing scheme. Revco paid a $50,000 fine and was forced to make restitution for more than $500,000 in false billings. In 1978, Revco began developing freestanding film processing centers called photostops, 14 of which were in operation by the end of the year. The 1980s brought with them a whirlwind of mergers, buyouts, and acquisitions that would ultimately engulf and cripple Revco. With 1,200 drugstores, sales in 1979 had hit $928 million. Although 1/4 of the drugstore's sales came from prescriptions, Revco had diversified and expanded. Alone among the major chains, Revco produced its own generic drugs, vitamins, and health products. In all, Revco stocked over 385 private labels. Up to 1983, Revco grew tremendously. The chain had over 2,200 stores and over $2.2 billion in sales. The chain then began to stumble. In 1983, its vitamins were blamed for the deaths of a number of premature infants. In order to prevent a hostile takeover and increase short-term profitability, Dworkin, the president of the company, then led the chain into a deal that would seal its fate many years later. Under his leadership, Revco purchased a company called Odd Lot Trading Company, a closeout retailer based in New Jersey. Revco's management lost its focus on the drugstore portion of its business due to problems with Odd Lot Trading Company, and earnings tumbled. The chain also began to merchandise items such as televisions, furniture, and other non-core items, and the heavy investment proved to be a failure. In 1986, Revco was the target of a leveraged buyout. Part of the buyout deal was to reduce costs by closing stores and by reducing inventory to repay debts. This left the company with a shortfall of cash, and suppliers stopped shipping inventory, causing the chain to lose customers. This eventually caused the chain to file for bankruptcy in 1988. Revco was bailed out of bankruptcy by investor Steve Zell, in part to fend off separate takeover attempts by Eckerd and Rite Aid. In 1990, 221 Midwest Revco stores were purchased by Reliable Drug. In 1992, Revco would emerge from bankruptcy. Revco's turnaround from bankruptcy was, and is still often considered, the model of all business recovery from bankruptcy. The chain closed many underperforming stores, including selling all the stores west of the Mississippi, reduced costs, introduced computerized point-of-sale systems, and introducing a new store design to help increase sales. The chain shrank from about 2,200 stores to about 1,500 stores during this period. After the bankruptcy, the chain grew tremendously again, increasing its store count to 2,500 stores. Part of this growth came from the purchase of 800 Hooks Super X drug stores in 1994 in the Mid-Atlantic region, and in the Midwest and Birmingham, Alabama, based Big B Drugs in the Southeast, which was its last purchase as a company in 1996. In order to help Zell recover his investment in the company's management was under pressure to sell the company. In 1996, Revco entered into an agreement with Rite Aid to be bought out, but antitrust regulations nixed that deal. In February of 1997, CVS Pharmacy entered into an agreement to acquire Revco for $2.8 billion. As part of the deal, due to antitrust legislation, some of the overlapping stores in the Virginia area were sold off to Eckerd, a medicine shop. The company at the time had 2,500 stores, and those stores were rebranded as CVS. So what are some of your favorite memories of this place? Leave a comment or a suggestion for a future video below. Be sure to hit that like button. Thanks for watching.